So Alfie, you want to do the commentary today? Yeah, I mean, you've got more of a clue on the economy than Rachel Reeves, in my opinion. But let's move. Let me have a go. Hello guys, and welcome to another video. My name's Mark. I'm an entrepreneur and property investor. In today's video, we're talking about, is Labour going to cause a recession in 2025? Now, all the outlook for the UK is becoming more and more negative by the day. We have unemployment currently rising. We have reports from the CBI stating that private firms throughout the UK are expecting a big decline in 2025. And overall, the mood of the nation is one of a bit of despair of all these policies that have come out, how high the tax burden has become on companies. There are so many headwinds for businesses to overcome. And my question is, where does that lead us to in 2025? Now, if you like this sort of video, if you like this sort of content, please give it a big like. It does help me out with the algorithm. And if you haven't already subscribed, consider subscribing. Remember, until we get to 10,000 subscribers, if you look in the description, you can book a free one-to-one call with me. I'm currently doing 2 or 3 every single day and enjoying every single one of them. So please book that in as soon as you possibly can. You've probably only got a couple of months because we're growing at such a fast rate on this channel. So guys, let's get into the video. Let's talk about what's been going on. Obviously in July, we had the Labour government come into policy, and you will remember there will be no more tax, not a penny more on your council tax, not a penny more for working people. Fast forward to the budget, and obviously the bombshells started falling. And a big plethora of tax raises came into force. Some of them have started already, like the stamp duty increase. Some of them are coming in the new year, like the grocery tax, and others are coming in April, like the employer's NI. Now, all of this put together is putting an additional 40 billion, that's 40 billion pounds of tax burden on UK PLC. Now, whether you believe or not that businesses and private individuals' wealth are connected, I believe they are. That tax has to come from somewhere. And capitalism does mean that companies compete with each other, both for staff and customers, and it evens out the playing field and means that unless you have a meaningful differentiator, your margins are kept in check. So these companies that are facing this big NI increase, they have not got all this excess margin because they're already competing in the competitive marketplace. So that money has to come from somewhere. That money has to come from the consumer or their staff. And in fact, I have an article in front of me right here that says business and professional services expect headcount to fall by over the next 3 months, minus 17%, with expectations at their weakest since September 2020. The biggest issue we have faced in a generation, COVID. So we are back to expectations being that low. And that is really worrying for me as a business owner and as an investor. Now, you might think that the Bank of England will be able to just cut interest rates, put more money into people's pockets, mean that businesses can borrow and invest at a lower rate, but they are going to be constrained by the Fed. And the Fed has already come out and said they're only expecting a 0.5% drop in 2025. And if the Bank of England cut much beyond that, then the pound will weaken, and all those commodities, all the imports that we have that are traded in dollars, we're talking all your oil, your gas, your energy, we're talking about all the raw materials for building, all of those things that we import, they're going to become more and more expensive. And don't forget, we already have one of the most expensive energy bills on the planet. So what does that actually mean for households and businesses? Well, it means that it's highly unlikely that the Bank of England are going to be able to come in and rescue the economy. It really is a political issue. It's this extra tax. Now, Labour have said that this is required in order to invest in our public services. But prior to the election, they said it was fully covered and that they weren't going to need to raise taxes. For me, this borders on lying, criminal. I don't know. I wouldn't be allowed to do this in a boardroom without repercussions. I wouldn't be able to say one thing, this is all fully costed, and then come back and go, well, actually, I would have repercussions, people to answer to. And I guess it's the UK public that the Labour Party have to answer to when it comes to saying one thing and doing something completely separate. And my mind just goes back to Rishi Sunak saying at the time of the election, we already know what they're going to do. We already know they will come back and they will say that there's this black hole partly that they will create because they will do public sector pay rises and that will have to raise your taxes. And they've done it in a sneaky, stealthy way, of course, by saying that it's on employers' NI. But where do you think that money comes from? If you're a business owner, it comes, you already know, when you cost up a member of staff, their pay, their pension contributions, their NI, and your NI, you cost it all up together. You don't say, this person cost me this, and then there's this magical other tax that I pay. No. You cost that headcount up in its entirety. If you're not a business owner, then hopefully this video will explain to you how your employers are going to be costing up your cost. It's going to be your pay, your pension, and your employer's NI. And once that's all put together, that's the total package they are paying you. Now, if the employer's NI increases, well, the scope for pay rises decrease, doesn't it? So when April comes around and most people are used to getting a pay rise, some of that pay rise is going to have to be used to pay the government. Ultimately, it's always going to fall on the UK public to pay the tax, no matter how it's dressed up. The grocery tax that's been announced, that's coming out in January 2025, is going to put an additional £1.4 billion annually, which will need to be paid by households. It's not going to be paid by the retailers. The retailers are already operating on very slim margins. And you might say, well, Tesco's made 2.7 billion last year, or whatever the number was. Well, if you tax them with an additional billion in employers' NI, then you hike national minimum wage to cost them another £500 million, and then you put the grocery tax on top. Well, guess what? They're not making any money anymore. And in a competitive marketplace, businesses have to make money. Otherwise, there's no appetite to invest. So you have to realize that that money is going to have to come from somewhere. So whenever I see a figure like 1.4 billion to be taxed on those retailers in this grocery tax, I know that's coming straight out of UK people's pockets. There's no other scenario. The same with the employer's NI, the same with any additional tax on business. It's all going to have to come out of the UK people's pockets. So you can dress that up as you want, it's coming from the same source. So obviously, I believe that there is big headwinds ahead for the UK. Now, do I think that there's going to be a recession? Quite probably in 2025. I think this increased tax burden is incredibly dangerous for the people of the UK, for the consumption of the UK, i.e. going out and buying goods and taking advantages of services. I think there is likely to be a slowdown in economic activity, and that is highlighted by the report from the CBI that states exactly the same. But what's even more worrying for me is that the UK is driving away wealth creators and the people who have made it in the UK. It is driving away its millionaire population. And at the moment, the UK is set to lose about 17% of its millionaires over the course of this Labour Parliament. And I am one of them. I've already moved to Dubai. I moved because I felt that the UK was not the right place for me to bring up my family, and it was not the right place for me to position any business. I felt that globally, as a global citizen, the UK was not competing for my business and my residency. So I left, and I am not alone. In this year alone, the UK is set to lose 9,500 millionaires. Over the next 4 years, it's set to lose another couple of 100,000. That is huge. And who pays the most tax in the UK? Well, it's the millionaires. It's the people who have got the money. It's the people who create big businesses, and it's the people who create jobs. They pay the lion's share of all the tax. So if you drive all those people away, well, what's the outcome? Do you just keep raising tax on ordinary people until they just can't take it anymore and the standard of living decreases? I don't have the answer. I can only see one answer, if I'm honest, and I would love to hear another down in the comments if you've got one. The only answer is to make the UK competitive on a global scale so that people who want to drive wealth and innovation come to the UK to do that. Now, that's obviously a bit of a pessimistic sentence and a bit of a pessimistic outlook, but I do have some optimism as well. Will I continue to invest in the UK? Yes. It is my home nation. It's somewhere that I believe has so much potential. But I'm going to be choosing my investments very, very carefully. When it comes to property, and I did say at the beginning of this video, I'm an entrepreneur and property investor, I'm choosing places like Sheffield to invest money. And that's because with a Labour government pushing up minimum wage nationally, whether I buy in Oxford or whether I buy in Sheffield, the wages are starting to narrow in this gap. And that means there's so much house price growth in the regions where maybe house prices have been depressed for a long period of time. And certainly over the last couple of years, I've experienced that in Sheffield. I mean, we were buying 3-bedroom houses in 2019 for £60,000-70,000. Today, they're £140,000. Guess what? I think that can double again. It's still far below the national average. And even if someone was taking out £150,000 mortgage, right? Like, let's say, for example, they're buying a £180,000 house, a £150,000 mortgage at 5%. Well, those payments are still very, very affordable, even if you're on a minimum wage job. And that is why I think that those areas have still got so much potential. Again, I'm a capitalist. I see what the government is telling me to do. I listen to what they're saying. They're saying, if you want low tax, go somewhere else. I've done it. I listened. I did exactly what you said. I hear what they're saying with the minimum wage. I hear they're saying, we want to create a level playing field throughout the UK, and we want to push salaries to be about the same everywhere for everyone. This is what the minimum wage generally does. Should there be a minimum wage even? I don't believe there should. I mean, if you just want to live on minimum wage, probably. But I think that people need to climb a ladder, and companies should compete for staff and talent. And staff and talent should compete to be better so that they get more opportunities. I genuinely believe in this full capitalist society, and I think that people will prosper more under that sort of leadership. But I'm listening to what the government are saying. They're saying, actually, whether you live in Oxford or whether you live in Sheffield, the minimum wage should be exactly the same, regardless of the cost of living. And I'm thinking, where are people going to have more affordability? Well, obviously where those house prices are so significantly cheaper, and where a proportion of the wage is going to be so much less spent on housing. And a national minimum wage now at £12.50, well, it will be in April. We're talking a £26,000 job as a minimum wage job. The average UK salary is only 30k. So we're talking about, over the coming Parliament, Labour have committed to essentially closing that gap. I think we'll have stagnation in employment, we'll have stagnation in wage rises, and we'll just create a one-tier society where everybody's paid about the same for about the same work, regardless of where they live. And that gives an opportunity in those cheaper areas. So guys, I will continue to invest in the UK. I will still continue to invest in property there. I do believe there are big opportunities. It's a market I know well. It's a legal system that I trust. So there are lots of things going for it. And I just wish we had politicians in charge who understand how to make UK a global place to invest and position it as a global leader to attract talent and businesses. We're currently pushing them away. I don't understand that kind of rhetoric, and I don't understand that kind of policy decision. I think we should be attracting the brightest. We should be attracting the wealthy. We should be allowing them to prosper and build in the UK to make the UK better in every single way. The more money that comes into the UK, surely the wealthier it becomes. Instead of pushing all the wealth away, bring it in, and you're never going to do that in a really high tax environment. So guys, I hope you've enjoyed this video. Put your comments down below. As always, I really enjoy reading all of them, and I do respond to every single one. Whichever side of the argument that you fall on, I want to hear it. To summarize, I think we've already had the biggest recession. I think this silent recession that's taken place with inflation running at 20% and growth being in single digits means that that's already taken place. Will there be a nominal one in 2025? I can see it on the horizon. I think living standards are going to drop. I think the UK is pushing millionaires away, and I think there's only really one reason why, and that is the politicians in charge of this country. So if you're like me and you're a capitalist, you'll understand what I'm saying. If you're not, you probably won't, and I would love to get hammered in the comments. So guys, I will see you on the next video. See you soon.